Shout out Lil Yachty, bro. I mean, I didn't fucking see that coming.
That was one of our reactions to Lil Yachty's new album. Let's start here. This is definitely a change of pace for him. So in today's episode, we are going to be giving our official review to Lil Yachty's new album. And the way that we do reviews here are quite special just because we do not use a numerical system. We go by different categories. So example, artist performance, then going into the features, content, production, replay value, and then that all adds into one final score. And then after that, we have our scaling system, which is bad, mid, good, great, amazing, and then perfect. So, Lou, let's jump into the artist performance. This is completely out of left field for Lil Yachty.
Lil Yachty getting out of his comfort zone. Shout out to Yachty, bro. Honestly, I didn't really see this coming. Obviously, we knew that he was diving into an alternative album, and I think that it was a pleasant surprise for everybody just because anytime a hip-hop artist goes into more of an experimental lane, it's always exciting for the community, right? So,
very well
going into this performance, Yachty is not rapping for like 99.9% of the album. He's tapping into his crooning and singing bag to carry out the album, and the first thing I want to point out is his curation skills as an artist, because I was super impressed on how he orchestrated this album in terms of really being involved with, I would say, the arrangements of the songs as well as the instrumental switches. For example, on the intro, The Black Seminole, when he says now, you get this burst of drums and you get the Diana Gordon vocals, which were absolutely beautiful. And I feel like it was cool to see that he was kind of playing the puppet master role within the production and sequencing of the album.
Exactly.
Too.
And what's cool too is that Lil Yachty has never tackled this type of sound. It's a very psychedelic rock inspired sound, very alternative. And for Lil Yachty, he moved away from that bubblegum rap that you're usually accustomed to from Yachty, and I think that it was actually a perfect move for him because this performance is very mature, it's very calculated. Everything that he put into the studio album sounds like it belongs, and it sounds like he fit this aesthetic, which was maybe a bit of a concern I had going into the album. Was like, how is Yachty going to fit on alternative rock? And then you go into it and you're like, fuck, his vocals are actually matching the production choices that he's bringing to the table.
So execution-wise, you thought that he brought it?
I do think that he brought it. And he brought it especially on his Poland vocals, okay? Because everyone was waiting to see, okay, are those vocals going to make a return? Is it going to be more hip-hop style? How is it going to fuse in with the production? And it was super well calculated because it wasn't overbearing and it didn't overplay the stay on the album. So example, you're going to see them prominent on two main songs, Say Something and Pretty, but they're used differently. So example, on something like Say Something, you get it more directly and more of a verse sort of tone, and
it sounds better on Say Something than it does on Pretty. On Pretty, it kind of hits you very rough in the mix.
But I do like it though. I do like
your
it.
Ears.
But the thing is with Say Something, I feel like it's a bit more background vocals if I remember correctly. Like it's kind of layered in back of the verse, so I do feel like it fit the production.
Yeah.
And for Pretty, like you were saying, it was a lot more in your face, and it felt like more. It felt like more on his vocals, if that makes sense to you. But how do you feel about Yachty on this album, bro, and just the presence?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the most fascinating thing is that Yachty really chose to play second fiddle to the instrumentation. I thought that was a really good choice just because, we'll get into the production later, but it's pretty fantastic. But going into Yachty here, I mean, there's definitely highlights in terms of, again, songs like Paint the Sky, for example, where the hook is absolutely killer. It's super catchy. The melody's on point. But then you do also have certain moments where Yachty's performance is not great because his harmonizing isn't all that strong. And I also feel like at times his singing is a bit off key. For example, in the song Say Something, he kind of goes falsetto on like the hook where he's like, I need your love. And you hear a bit of the cracks in the voice.
I feel like the vocals could have been a bit cleaner, but I will give him this, is that he's never been really known to be a crazy vocalist, and I do think that he did try to the best of his capabilities, but it just didn't hit in certain areas. An example, I feel like there was certain abrupt moments for Yachty on this album as far as the performance goes. Example, on something like I've Officially Lost Vision, Diana Gordon had an incredible feature on this, and I'm going to talk about it more in the features category, but with this, it's like she comes in with these beautiful angelic vocals, and then boom, there's this huge abrupt energy from Yachty coming into the track, and I understand that was the purpose of it, but I'm not sure if it agreed with me. But overall, I think Lil Yachty did his thing on this album, man. I want to give it a good rating.
I think it was good. I think he proved that he can find his place within this new musical backdrop, despite the vocal blemishes. The only thing is that I feel like the reason why it's good and maybe not great is that his voice didn't really bring out too many emotions out of me as a listener, I feel like.
Yeah, the
be
vocals
honest.
could have definitely been a bit better, but maybe that's something he's going to improve for the next project if he does come back
Yeah.
with this new sound.
Yeah.
But let's go on to the features, man. Like, this is easily one of the biggest standouts of the album for me, and this was, calculated to a T, bro. You have Tizo Touchdown, you have Justine Skye, you have Diana Gordon on this, you have Fouché, like, you have a bunch of different...
Daniel Caesar
like,
was...
so many great vocalists that added to the soundscape of this album. So what are the most impressive standouts?
Oh, Diana Gordon is the MVP of this album, bro. Without any doubt. Like, the outro that she belts out is monumental on Black Seminole. Not only that, but the track, what's it called? The Vision? What was that one called again?
I've officially lost vision.
I've
Track
officially
number 9.
lost vision, bro. Again, another beautiful sung performance from her. And every time that she got on the mic, I'm like, this would have been a very different song if she had the entire runtime of it. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. But what I do like about her is that, like, she plays perfect next to Yachty, where, like, Yachty might not be able to keep up, but he still has nice harmonies. And then, boom, she just comes and she perfects everything throughout every track. So Diana Gordon did a fantastic job.
You think she's a standout? I think she is.
Oh, absolutely.
She
was was my favorite part of this whole
Fouché,
album.
though, as well, bro.
Fantastic
I love her
vocals.
gentle vocals. And yeah, I feel like she really added something in terms of bringing emotion to the track list. And yeah, she killed it as well. Justine Skye on The Zone. I love how she's kind of singing about loneliness and like how desperate she is to be with her lover. Kind of played into the theme of that track. Nice lead and background vocals from her on that one.
Yeah, I also like Tizo Touchdown on this. I didn't know what to expect for track number 2.
Very simplistic.
It is very simplistic,
Yeah.
but it adds to the ride, though, because it's a very simplistic production as well, and more just to get you in a groove and a melody. He had verse 1, and then he had half of the second verse, which was, well, performed upon. But let's go on to Daniel Caesar, because he's going to be closing out this album, and he is a fantastic vocalist, bro. He's great, and
Yeah.
what's cool is that if you're used to Daniel Caesar's vocals, sometimes they're a bit more uplifting, they feel a bit more triumphant, but this felt a bit more subdued for Daniel Caesar, which was quite impressive to see because it's not maybe standard for him, at least from like what I'm used to him. So how did you like Daniel Caesar on the end of this track list?
I thought that it was a great track. I love the fact that his vocals really match that tempo of that acoustic guitar that you're hearing, and it was actually cool to see that there was maybe more chemistry between Caesar and Yachty than Yachty and anyone else on the album, oddly
I like
enough.
that. That's interesting.
So that was a cool observation. Apart from that, I think that when I'm looking individually at all these performances, they're really pretty fucking great. But I feel like the features do kind of play into a detriment of the album, just because when you're hearing Yachty side by side with these other vocalists, you really start to see the clear gap in vocal ability and range from Yachty in comparison to the rest.
While I do agree with you, I don't feel like it takes away that much from me in the album experience just because of how valuable they are.
Yeah.
So I do agree that you do see that gap throughout the album, but for the most part, man, like, I'll take those features all fucking
Of
day.
course.
So I think the features were great.
Great verging on amazing, but I think great is fair.
I think great is a fair rating for it. But let's go on to the content, all right? Because I mean, man, we've had some laughs with, Yachty content in the past with silly bars and, some corny wordplay, but you're not going to find any of that on this. This is really mature writing for Yachty standards, and I love the approach he took with it because even looking at the song structures and everything that he brought to the table, example, like, well calculating all of his hooks and the amount of times they were implemented into tracks, or where to place certain bridges and how to use certain vocabulary to be able to extend his vocals, and the way that the auto-tune mixed with that vocabulary, I do feel like it was well calculated all throughout, and this is a step up lyrically from anything he's ever done, and I do think it was the production that allowed him to do that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of his writing, I still think that the ideas are pretty simplistic, although being more clever. I feel like for the first time in a Yachty album, you did have kind of a central theme where Yachty is kind of experiencing psychosis for the entirety of this. His mind is kind of escaping him. He's kind of just going with the flow of the vibrations. It feels like he's kind of on this crazy drug trip, and he's kind of ascending towards the high. He's entering a new world, and then he kind of has the fall off towards the latter end of the track list. So it's cool to kind of see that transition, and he really sets that up well on the song The Ride, where you see him kind of embarking on a new journey and finding a new area to play in. So that was pretty cool. Apart from that, I'm going to mention the Pink Floyd influence again, the Black Seminole. I feel like lyrically, how patient he was with his delivery reminded me of something like Comfortably Numb, especially in terms of the subject matter. Yachty is kind of describing his physical state the same way that that Pink Floyd did, Uncomfortably Numb, where they're like, when I was a child, I had a fever, my hands felt just like two balloons. Yachty is kind of singing about having his two hands on his head and having his head to the sky.
Yeah, you know what I also think is a huge standout for the content as far as the theme. I've officially lost vision. I mean, even looking at the chorus on that, I did way too many drugs, way too much drugs. Excuse me. I've been swirling and spinning, and what's cool too is that he's kind of world building to a certain extent, where you could picture Yachty in front of you, like kind of all dehazed and kind of like, whoa, what's going on? I'm in a completely different universe than in comparison to what's really in front of me. So I really do think that's a standout as far as the content as well.
I was also Pretty, which I feel like wasn't the strongest in terms of the writing. That one kind of took me out of the album. You know, it's Yachty singing about him feeling himself, being pretty, grabbing on his girl's titties out of nowhere, like just the most random stuff.
It was random Yachty stuff, but I still do feel like it was a fun track for him, and that it didn't take away from anything for me.
It was all right. Yeah, it was
okay.
A decent track.
What about Failure?
That's what I was going to talk about. That
Failure, like you get towards halfway through the track list, and you get this spoken word with a beautiful instrumental in the background on Failure, and it's cool because I really wanted to save these words for the review. Revise your steps and rewrite your future. Failure to me isn't like always a negative thing, more so like just a way to re-look at things, and you never know how close you are to success. And I feel like that's kind of just painted Lil Yachty's whole career. Like a lot of people have, kind of clowned him for the music he was making, all the way going back to the Joe Budden incident, all the way going back to, all of like the Twitter rants people used to have about his music and how they felt like he didn't necessarily have a place. Like this really feels at home for Yachty, and I think that's what the content means to him, at least in my opinion, from what I'm seeing, is like, I just want to have fun. I want to be creatively free.
Yeah, I think it's Yachty just wanting to be respected as an artist and not wanting to have that SoundCloud rapper and mumble rapper kind of tag attached to him, which I think is something that he said in a recent interview too. So I feel like this is that album for him to be taken more seriously, because he is diving headfirst into this concept and, like you said, building a new world for us. So it was pretty exciting, bro. I mean, like you said, it was definitely a good spoken word passage. Even him just flipping his failure and misfortune into a positive as a learning experience, that was fire as well. Yeah, because he had
talked about also his home being robbed, and he was kind of like, well, maybe they needed it more than me. And then he explained the concept of that, and he was like, that just gets so much stress off my shoulders, because at the end of the day, you start to realize that everything happens for a reason.
Shit's replaceable.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you just got to go with the flow. So overall, I think the content was good.
I think it was good.
It was definitely enjoyable, and you guys are going to have a fun time with it. But okay, let's go into the strongest point of this album,
Absolutely.
And that is the fucking production. Lil Yachty, you smashed it out of the park with the beat selection. And what's cool about this, too, is that there's a super, tight-knit cast of producers that did work on this album. We'll be going through them throughout this category, but standouts for production, bro. What do you got?
Standouts for production. I would say that, again, I keep mentioning this song because it's probably my favorite track, but the Black Seminole, just because of that psychedelic rock influence. And this is how I kind of feel about the entire soundscape, is that it's filled with these progressive, multi-layered psychedelic rock beats that have these really cool electric guitar chords, that have these kind of synth escapades on certain tracks.
Yeah, these really nice bass lines rung through all that track list. It's really nice.
But my favorite beat, it would probably have to be Drive Me Crazy, which oddly enough isn't really that much of a psychedelic rock beat. It kind of plays more into 70s dance and disco.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to see me gravitate more towards that track sonically than the majority of everything else. But overall, yeah, it was really cool to see how much of an impact these beats and these sounds had on Yachty, because he really made them take full center control, because you also have a lot of meandering beats, a lot of meandering outros where you're really getting to hear the beat switches and to hear them close off the tracks. But what about you? What are your standouts production-wise?
Listen, I think when I go into this album, what really amazed me is just how Yachty was able to tackle all these types of productions and how everything cohesively flowed together, because I feel like when you pay attention to the production, it also follows suits with the thematic basis of the writing, and that's really cool to me. But man, I would probably have to say the Black Seminole, bro. Going back to what you were saying about it, it takes me back to a time of certain productions that my dad used to show me, when he used to bring me to sports in the car, old Pink Floyd, bro. And I love what they were able to do on this project. So I want to shout out a couple of producers: Jacob Portrait, Patrick Wimberly, Sad Pony also.
Sad Pony exec
produced the project. Like, there was so many great producers, but yet like he didn't bring too many people into this. So you get that focused and coherent, sort of soundscape for all 14 tracks, which is super impressive to me.
Absolutely. Another standout for me is Reach the Sunshine production-wise. I love how those synths kind of climax midway through the track. Not only that, but what was also cool is hearing how he is able to seamlessly bring in elements and instruments and make them disappear into the background. Like, there was a lot of that, of just overlapping sounds that come in and come out so effortlessly.
It was just incredible. It felt kind of like fog to a certain extent, because like you feel like you're constantly being immersed into this soundscape, but you don't know what's coming next. You literally don't know what's in front of you.
It puts you in a trance. Like, the beats just suck you in like a fucking vacuum, bro. Like, it's absolutely crazy.
It's incredible. And I really want to give this more listens in the car, just because I want to hear how they sound on real speakers, and I'd love to just get more immersed into this soundscape. But I definitely do think this is the strongest part of the album. The production was amazing.
It was amazing. Love the build-ups, love the crescendos, everything that Yachty had in mind in terms of a vision for the sounds of this record were really well calculated. So shout out to Yachty for the beats on here. Fucking crazy. Let's get into the replay value now. It's very interesting when you see an artist that you're kind of used to for a certain sound tackle something completely new, because it's kind of sometimes hard to have that transition point of being like, well, I've known this guy for this style and sound for so long. Am I really going to immediately click and vibe with this new sound? That was the case for someone like Tyler, for example, with Igor, and now with Yachty, he kind of really fit in and didn't sound out of place on these records. And there's quite a few that I would want to take out of here. For example, I would go with the Black Seminole, I would go with the Ride, I would go with Running Out of Time, I would go with
The Zone for me as well.
Drive Me Crazy,
We Saw the Sun,
Paint the Sky, and Reach the Sunshine for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of consistency within this track list. And what was cool too is that we run polls within our live album reactions, and throughout the live album reaction yesterday, I think there was really only one skip for people, and it was The Alchemist, which
that is a skip.
Yeah, it is a skip on the album for me as well. But regardless, that was impressive, because sometimes you might get 2 or 3, but this was really the only one as far as the ratios were going for the voting polls. So shout out to everyone that was able to make it last night, by the way. It was a fantastic live album reaction. But yeah, going also into the track list, it's only 14 songs. It barely gets to under an hour, so that's nice too. And bro, Yachty did his thing on this. Like, I think the replay value might have gotten killed if like he would have tried to do too much, or it would have been too overbearing with certain performances, or if there wasn't that cohesive. Like, he fully committed to this sound, so it makes me want to be fully committed to the album.
Absolutely. I think that like what weighs it down slightly for me is just the fact that there's quite a few tracks on here where I'll like maybe only the first half of the track, but not the second half of the track.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
That's how I felt with a couple of songs on here, such as Drive Me Crazy, for example. But yeah, overall, I think that the replay value was good. There's a decent amount of tracks to take out of this, but more than that, as a full album experience, there's a lot of value to get out of here.
Yeah,
bro.
You should listen to this from start to finish.
Yeah.
So please don't use this as a playlist album. I mean, you can too. You guys do whatever you want with your music, but this is
fucking ordering the audience around, bro.
But I mean, fuck. Like, if you're gonna go into an album experience, just don't go like, oh, okay, these song titles sound cool. I'm gonna take these and add them to my like songs. Actually enjoy the album experience. But all right, let's go into our overall thoughts. I think Lil Yachty accomplished something special today. I think that it's a big move for his career, just, sonically and where he wants to go with the rest of his sound. I love to see an artist get out of his comfort zone and deliver on something that he's never tried before. I think that there's a great consistency within this track list. I do feel like, yes, Yachty's vocals do fall flat in certain areas, especially when you do compare them to certain feature choices. But, I'm way too invested into the features, into Yachty's cadences, and also that Poland voice. I fucking love it. And also the production choices to have that, weigh it all the way down for me, Like, I really did enjoy this listen, and I salute Yachty, man. It takes a lot of nuts to do this.
Yeah, man. I think Yachty really reinvented himself with this album and gave something that fans are going to remember for a long time. Not only that, but it is, I would say, a semi-successful experiment. More so successful than it isn't, just because Yachty put so much of his heart and soul into curating this album and delivering something really remarkable. I think that it was also really cool to see him mix his melodic style with psychedelic rock. I don't think the project's groundbreaking or cutting edge necessarily, but I do think that he strives in so many areas and put together his best album, bro, with let's start here. So shout out to fucking Yachty.
Yeah,
bro.
let's start here, and let's start with a good rating, bro. I think this
It is
was
a good album.
This was a good album.
Yeah.
This was definitely an enjoyable listen, and I would definitely recommend this to everyone. But do not expect a low boat sound. That's all I can tell you. If you're going in for that, you guys might as well just not listen.
It's definitely not gonna be that. But I wanted to see if everyone's going to receive it super well or it's going to be polarizing.
It's been polarizing so far.
It's been kind of polarizing, right? But
Yeah,
guys, let us know in the comments, how did you feel about this album? And if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed this review, please subscribe for more. As we mentioned earlier, our entire full live album reaction is available on Patreon. Link in the description. Much love to everybody who came in today, and we'll catch you in the next one.